Kasia Thorne never imagined her routine maintenance shift on Research Station Meridian would shatter every law of biology she thought immutable. The human engineer had spent the last 4 years working alongside beings from a dozen different star systems, but nothing compared to the moment her draconian partner Valeth stood before her in their shared quarters, scales shimmering with an unfamiliar luminescence. "There is something I must tell you," Valeth began, her voice carrying that deep resonance that always made Kasia's heart flutter. The Dragoness stood nearly 8 feet tall, her cobalt scales catching the artificial light of their living space. Her wings, usually folded neatly against her back, twitched with barely contained emotion. Kasia set down the repair tool she had been examining and gave her partner full attention. They had been together for 2 years now, ever since Valeth had chosen to remain on the human station rather than return to her homeworld of Dragoness Prime. The decision had cost Valeth her standing among the Sky Watchers, the elite guild of draconian explorers who mapped the unknown regions of space. "What is it?" Kasia asked, concern threading through her words. She walked closer, her boots clicking softly against the metal floor. At 5'6", she always felt small beside Valeth, but never diminished. Their relationship had taught her that love transcended size, species, and expectation. Valeth's golden eyes met hers, and in them Kasia saw a mixture of wonder and fear she had never witnessed before. The Dragoness reached out one clawed hand and gently took Kasia's smaller human hand in her own. The touch was warm, careful, as it always was when Valeth remembered her own strength. "I visited the medical bay this morning," Valeth said slowly, as if testing each word before releasing it. "I have been feeling strange sensations for the past month. A heat in my core that felt different from anything I have experienced before." Dr. Ramos performed a comprehensive scan. Kasia's concern deepened. "Are you sick? Is something wrong?" "Not wrong. Just impossible." Valeth guided Kasia's hand to rest against her abdomen, where the scales felt warmer than usual, almost pulsing with an inner energy. "I am carrying eggs, Kasia. 4 of them. And according to every test Dr. Ramos can devise, they are not purely draconian. They carry genetic markers from both of our species." The words hung in the air between them like stars suspended in the void. Kasia's mind struggled to process the information, running through everything she knew about xenobiology. Humans and draconians were not just different species. They were products of entirely separate evolutionary paths on worlds thousands of light-years apart. Their cellular structures operated on fundamentally different principles. Reproduction between them should have been as impossible as mixing water with starlight. "But we were told," Kasia whispered, her voice barely audible. "Every xenobiologist on this station confirmed it was impossible. We had 3 different medical teams examine us. They all said the same thing." "I know what they said." Valeth's wings spread slightly, an unconscious gesture that happened when she felt defensive. "I was there for every examination, every disappointed explanation. And yet, here we are. The scans do not lie. 4 eggs developing inside me, and they are ours. Yours and mine." Kasia pulled back slightly, not out of rejection but from the sheer overwhelming nature of the revelation. Her free hand moved to her mouth as her brain worked through the implications. "How is this even possible? Our DNA is completely incompatible. You do not even have DNA in the traditional sense. Your genetic code is stored in crystalline structures within your cells. Dr. Ramos has a theory." Valeth moved to their small table and activated a holographic display. Complex diagrams filled the air between them, showing molecular structures that seemed to shift and merge in ways that defied conventional science. "Do you remember 3 months ago, when the quantum resonance chamber malfunctioned during my survey of the station's energy core?" Kasia nodded slowly, the memory returning with sudden clarity. There had been an accident, a cascade failure in one of the experimental quantum generators being tested for faster-than-light communications. Valeth had been conducting a routine inspection when the chamber exploded, releasing a wave of exotic energy that had engulfed an entire section of the station. Kasha had been with her, helping to carry equipment. They had both been caught in the blast, though neither had suffered any apparent injuries. The quantum field, Kasha breathed, understanding beginning to dawn. It altered us somehow. More specifically, it created what Dr. Ramos calls a biological bridge. The quantum energy rewrote certain aspects of our cellular structures at a fundamental level. My crystalline genetic storage began producing proteins it should never be able to create. Your cells started recognizing my biochemistry as compatible rather than foreign. The changes were subtle, happening over weeks, but the result is what we see now. Valeth gestured to the holographic display, highlighting specific regions. These structures here are the eggs. They are draconian in form, requiring a temperature-regulated environment and a development cycle of approximately 6 months. But their internal composition is something entirely new. They carry characteristics from both species, genetic information that has somehow merged and stabilized into a viable hybrid template. Kasha sank into one of their chairs, her legs suddenly feeling weak. The implications were staggering. If this was real, if these eggs were truly viable, they would be the first successful cross-species offspring between spacefaring civilizations. Every government, every scientific institution, every military power in known space would want to study them, control them, or weaponize whatever knowledge could be gained from them. We need to keep this quiet, Kasha said immediately, her engineer's mind already working through the security implications. At least until we understand more about what is happening. If this gets out too soon, we will lose all control over our lives. I agree, but it may already be too late. Valetha's expression grew troubled. Dr. Ramos is bound by medical ethics to report unprecedented biological phenomena to the station's scientific committee. He promised us a 3-day grace period to process the information privately, but after that, the news will spread through official channels. 3 days. Kasha felt a laugh bubble up in her throat, though there was no humor in it. 3 days to prepare for their lives to be turned completely upside down. 3 days before they became the most scrutinized couple in the galaxy. What do we do? She asked, looking up at Valeth. Despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, she felt something else rising within her. Hope. Fragile and new, like the first light of dawn breaking through darkness. Valeth knelt down beside Kasha's chair, bringing their eyes level. The Dragoness's expression softened, and she cupped Kasha's face gently with one clawed hand. We prepare. We learn everything we can about what is happening to me, to us. We make plans for every possible outcome. And most importantly, we decide what kind of future we want for our family. Our family. The word sent a shiver through Kasha's entire being. She had never dared to dream of having children with Valeth. The impossibility of it had been a quiet grief she carried, one she rarely acknowledged even to herself. Now, impossibility had become reality, and she found herself terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. I love you, Kasha said softly, reaching up to cover Valetha's hand with her own. Whatever happens, whatever we face, that does not change. I know. Valeth leaned forward, touching her forehead to Kasha's in the draconian gesture of deepest affection. That is why I chose you over my entire world. That is why I will protect these eggs, our eggs, with every breath in my body. They are proof that love can transcend even the laws of nature. They stayed like that for a long moment, finding strength in each other's presence. Outside their quarters, Research Station Meridian continued its endless orbit around the amber gas giant it called home. Thousands of beings from dozens of worlds worked, lived, and dreamed beneath its protective hull, unaware that 2 of their number had just stumbled into a miracle that would reshape the future of interspecies relations. When they finally pulled apart, Kasha stood with renewed determination. All right. We have 3 days. Let us make the most of them. I want every scan, every test result, every piece of data Dr. Ramos has collected. If we are going to face the storm that is coming, we need to understand exactly what we are dealing with. Vailitha's expression shifted into something fierce and proud. This was the Kasha she had fallen in love with, the human who faced impossible challenges with resourcefulness and unshakable resolve. Then we begin now. Dr. Ramos is waiting for us in the medical bay. He wants to run additional tests, and he believes he may have found references to something similar in ancient draconian texts. Ancient texts? Kasha raised an eyebrow as she grabbed her jacket. Are you telling me this has happened before? Not exactly. But there are stories, legends really, of a time before draconians took to the stars. Tales of unions between beings of different natures that produced offspring of unique power. Most scholars dismiss them as mythology, but Dr. Ramos thinks there might be a kernel of truth buried in the fiction. As they left their quarters and made their way through the station's corridors, Kasha's mind was already racing ahead. She thought of all the hurdles they would face, the questions that would need answers, the threats that would emerge once their secret became public knowledge. But beneath the worry, beneath the fear, there was something else growing stronger with each passing moment. A fierce protective instinct, primal and absolute. Whatever it took, whatever she had to do, she would ensure that Vailith and their impossible children had the chance to thrive. The galaxy might not be ready for what they represented, but ready or not, change was coming. And Kasha Thorne had never backed down from a challenge in her life. The medical bay of Research Station Meridian hummed with quiet efficiency as Kasha and Vailith entered. Dr. Tavin Ramos looked up from his workstation, his three eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of agitation in his Trilaxian physiology. The doctor was a respected xenobiologist, his gray skin marked with the traditional patterns of his profession, and his reputation for discretion was the main reason Vailith had chosen to consult with him first. Ah, you are both here. Good. Dr. Ramos gestured toward the examination platform. Vailith, if you would please take your position. I have prepared a more detailed scanning sequence that should give us better insight into the developmental progress of the eggs. Vailith moved gracefully to the platform, her tail curving around her body as she settled into a comfortable position. The platform adjusted automatically to accommodate her larger frame, extending and reinforcing to support her weight. Kasha stood nearby, close enough to offer support but far enough to stay out of the medical equipment's range. Before we begin, Dr. Ramos said, his voice carrying the careful precision of someone delivering difficult news, I must inform you both that I have been researching similar phenomena in the xenobiological archives. What I have found is both encouraging and deeply troubling. Encouraging how? Kasha asked, crossing her arms over her chest. She had learned long ago that with doctors, you always wanted to hear the positive news first, because it usually came with significant caveats. Dr. Ramos pulled up a holographic display showing complex genetic structures. The quantum field exposure you both experienced did not simply make you compatible. It created what I can only describe as a localized evolutionary leap. Your cells, Kasha, are now producing proteins that should not exist according to any known human biology. And Vailith, your crystalline genetic structures have developed the capacity to read and integrate carbon-based genetic information. He manipulated the display, highlighting specific regions. In essence, the quantum energy acted as a catalyst, forcing both of your biologies to adapt to each other at an accelerated rate. The result is a hybrid genetic template that is stable, viable, and according to all my projections, capable of producing healthy offspring. Vailitha's wings relaxed slightly, a visible sign of relief. Then the eggs will survive? The eggs are not just surviving. They are thriving. Dr. Ramos activated the scanning equipment, and a three-dimensional image of Vailitha's internal structure appeared in the air. Four distinct forms glowed within her abdomen, each pulsing with its own rhythm. Their development is proceeding faster than pure draconian eggs would, but slower than human gestation. I estimate you are roughly equivalent to 6 weeks into what will likely be a 5 to 6 month incubation period. Kasha moved closer to the display, studying the eggs with wonder. Each one was about the size of her fist, covered in what appeared to be a semi-translucent shell that glowed faintly with internal light. Can you tell anything about them? What they might be like? Some things, yes. Dr. Ramos zoomed in on one of the eggs. They are developing with a hybrid skeletal structure. Lighter than pure draconian bone but denser than human. Their cardiovascular systems show characteristics of both species, which suggests they will be able to thrive in a wider range of environmental conditions than either parent species alone. He paused, his three eyes focusing intently on them both. However, this brings me to the troubling part of my findings. I have discovered references to a similar occurrence in ancient draconian history. Not in scientific journals, but in religious texts and historical epics that are over 3,000 years old. Valeth sat up straighter, her attention sharpening. What kind of references? Stories of a time called the Age of Merging, when the first Draconians were said to have united with beings from the void beyond their world. The texts are fragmentary and heavily metaphorical, but they describe offspring that possessed abilities far beyond either parent species. Wings that could fold through dimensions. Breath that could reshape matter. Intelligence that perceived time differently than linear beings. That sounds like mythology, Kasia said, though her tone was uncertain. Most scholars agree with you, Dr. Ramos acknowledged. But here is what concerns me. Those same texts describe a great fear that arose among the pure Draconians when these hybrid children were born. Fear of what they represented, fear of their power, fear that they would supplant the original species. The texts become vague after that, but the implication is that the hybrids were hunted. Eliminated. The Age of Merging ended not with celebration but with what can only be described as genocide. The temperature in the medical bay seemed to drop. Valetha's scales darkened slightly, a physiological response to threat that Kasia had only seen a handful of times. You think my people will react the same way if they learn about our eggs? I think it is a possibility we must consider, Dr. Ramos said gently. Modern draconian society has evolved significantly since ancient times, but the core values of genetic purity and species preservation remain strong. Your own exile for choosing to mate with a human demonstrates how seriously your people take these matters. Kasia felt anger rising in her chest. They cannot just decide to eliminate children that have not even hatched yet. There are laws, interspecies agreements, basic ethics that govern behavior between civilizations. Laws that were written assuming such hybrids were impossible, Dr. Ramos pointed out. The moment your situation becomes public knowledge, every government will be scrambling to determine how to respond. Some will see your children as miracles to be protected and studied. Others will see them as threats to the natural order. And still others will see them as opportunities to be exploited. Valeth stood up from the examination platform, her full height and presence suddenly dominating the room. Then we ensure they do not learn. Not until we have established protections, not until we have allies who will stand with us. That is easier said than done, Dr. Ramos said, though there was sympathy in his voice. My obligation to report this discovery stands. I have given you 3 days as a courtesy, but after that, the station's medical committee must be informed. From there, the information will spread through official channels. You have perhaps a week, maybe 2, before every major power in this sector knows about your eggs. Kasia's mind raced through possibilities, evaluating and discarding options with the speed of someone used to solving complex problems under pressure. What if we leave? Take one of the small research shuttles and disappear into the frontier territories where the major powers have limited reach. You would be fugitives, Dr. Ramos said. And Valeth requires specialized medical care during the incubation period. The eggs are developing in ways that have never been documented. Without proper monitoring, complications could arise that would endanger both her and the children. Then we need allies before the news breaks, Valeth said firmly. People with power who can help us establish legal protections, who can advocate for our right to exist as a family without interference. Do you know anyone with that kind of influence? Kasha asked. Valeth was quiet for a moment, her golden eyes distant as she considered. There is someone. Captain Thane Rydell. He commands the diplomatic vessel Horizon's Edge. We served together years ago when I was still part of the Sky Watchers. He left Draconian service to join the Interstellar Coalition as a mediator between species. If anyone would be willing to help us, and has the political connections to make a difference, it would be him. Can you contact him without drawing attention? Dr. Ramos asked. Perhaps. He owes me a life debt from our time in service. Among Draconians, that is a bond not easily broken, even by exile. Valeth looked at Kasha. But reaching him will require using communication channels that are monitored. We would be showing our hand, revealing that we are seeking help. Kasha reached out and took Valeth's hand. Then we show our hand. Trying to hide is just delaying the inevitable. If we are going to fight for our family, we need to start building our defenses now. Dr. Ramos nodded approvingly. A wise decision. I will do what I can to delay my official report, but you should assume you have no more than 5 days of relative privacy. Use them well. Over the next several hours, they worked on crafting a message to Captain Rydell. It had to be detailed enough to convey the urgency of their situation but vague enough not to reveal too much if it was intercepted. Valeth dictated while Kasha typed, her engineer's precision helping to refine the language. Thane Rydell of Horizon's Edge. This is Valeth Stormwing, once of the Sky Watchers. I invoke the life debt you owe me from the Vortex incident. My mate and I face a situation of unprecedented nature that requires immediate political and legal counsel. What we carry within us will change the relationship between our species forever. We request your presence on Research Station Meridian with utmost discretion. Time is critical. The future of interspecies cooperation may depend on your response. Kasha read it back aloud. Is that clear enough without being too specific? It will have to be, Valeth said. Thane will understand the gravity from my use of the life debt. Draconians do not invoke such bonds lightly. They sent the message through encrypted channels, then began the anxious wait for a response. Station life continued around them with oblivious normalcy. Kasha returned to her engineering duties, finding comfort in the familiar routines of maintaining the station systems. Valeth spent time in their quarters, reading through the ancient texts Dr. Ramos had provided, searching for any additional information about the historical hybrids. 2 days passed with agonizing slowness. Kasha found herself constantly distracted, her mind drifting to thoughts of the future. What would their children look like? Would they have wings like Valeth or walk upright like humans? Would they breathe fire or speak with human vocal cords? Every question led to a dozen more, each more impossible to answer than the last. On the 3rd day, as Kasha was inspecting a malfunctioning pressure valve in one of the station's lower sections, her communicator chimed with an urgent message. She fumbled it out of her pocket, heart racing. It was from Valeth, just 2 words, he came. Kasha abandoned her tools and ran. You prepare for war, Thane said bluntly. Not a war of weapons, but of words, laws, and public opinion. Because make no mistake, once this becomes public, every media outlet in the galaxy will want your story. Every government will try to control the narrative. We need to get ahead of it, shape how your family is perceived before others can define you as threats or tools. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of activity. Thane's team arrived, a diverse group of beings from multiple species, each bringing expertise in their field. They transformed Kasha and Valeth's quarters into a command center, filling the space with holographic displays, legal documents, and strategic planning materials. Dr. Ramos joined them, providing detailed medical reports that would form the foundation of their legal arguments. The medical data was irrefutable. It showed that the eggs were developing normally with no signs of instability or danger. This would be crucial in countering arguments that the hybrids posed biological threats. Meanwhile, Thane worked on a different front, building political capital. He sent carefully worded messages to allies throughout the coalition, calling in favors, and establishing a network of support. Some responses were encouraging, others less so, but each one added to their growing understanding of the battlefield they faced. On the fourth day after Vailith's initial discovery, Dr. Ramos made his formal report to the station's medical committee as required. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Within hours, the committee had convened an emergency session. By evening, the station's commander was demanding a meeting with Kasha and Vailith. "This is it," Thane said as they prepared for the meeting. "Everything we have built over the past few days will be tested. Remember, you are not asking for permission to exist. You are asserting your right to exist. There is a difference." The meeting room was crowded with station officials, medical personnel, and security officers. Commander Helena Winters sat at the head of the table, her expression carefully neutral but her eyes sharp with calculation. She was a career officer, someone who had navigated the complexities of managing a multicultural research station for over a decade. "Let me be clear," Commander Winters began without preamble. "I am not here to judge your personal choices or your relationship. But I am responsible for the safety and security of everyone on this station. What you are describing represents an unprecedented situation with far-reaching implications." "We understand that," Thane said, speaking before either Kasha or Vailith could respond. "Which is why we have taken steps to ensure this situation is handled through proper diplomatic and legal channels. I am here representing the Interstellar Coalition's Office of Species Integration. We are prepared to invoke Protocol 7, which provides emergency protections for unprecedented biological phenomena." Commander Winters frowned. Protocol 7 was designed for discovering new sentient species, not for hybrid offspring. The protocol's language is broad enough to cover any situation where a new form of sentient life emerges, one of Thane's legal experts interjected. She was a human woman named Dr. Van Marlowe, whose reputation for winning impossible cases preceded her. "These children, when born, will represent the first confirmed viable hybrids between spacefaring species. By definition, they are a new form of sentient life." The debate continued for hours. Arguments were made and countered. Medical data was presented and scrutinized. Legal precedents were cited and challenged. Through it all, Kasha sat beside Vailith, their hands clasped together beneath the table, drawing strength from each other's presence. Finally, as the station's artificial night cycle approached, Commander Winters called for a recess. "I need to consult with Earth Command and the Coalition Oversight Committee. This decision is beyond my authority to make alone. In the meantime, Kasha Thorne and Vailith Stormwing will remain on the station under protective observation. Not house arrest," she clarified quickly, seeing their expressions. "But we will be assigning a security detail for your protection. Once this news spreads, and it will spread despite our best efforts, you will become targets for various factions." As they left the meeting room, surrounded now by a discreet security team, Kasha felt the weight of their new reality settling over her. Their quiet life on the station was over. From this moment forward, they would be symbols, representatives of something larger than themselves. Back in their quarters, Vailith stood at the window, looking out at the stars. Kasha joined her, wrapping her arms around her partner's waist as much as the height difference allowed. "I am afraid," Vailith admitted softly. "Not for myself, but for them. For what kind of world they will be born into." "Then we make it a better one," Kasha said with quiet determination. "Whatever it takes. We fight for them, we protect them, and we show the galaxy that love and family transcend the boundaries we have drawn between species." Vailith turned and pulled Kasha into an embrace, careful as always of her strength. "You are fierce, my small human. It is one of the many reasons I love you." "And you are impossible," Kasha replied, but there was no heat in it, only affection. "Which makes us perfect for each other." Outside their window, the galaxy turned in its eternal dance, unaware that two beings and their unborn children were about to challenge everything it thought it knew about the limits of life and love. The storm was coming, but for now, in this moment, they had each other. And sometimes, that was enough to face even the impossible. Captain Thane Rydell was not what Kasha had expected. The draconian male stood in their quarters with a presence that commanded respect without demanding it. His scales were a deep emerald green, marked with silver patterns that denoted his rank in the interstellar coalition. Unlike Vailitha's natural armor, his scales were partially covered by a formal diplomatic uniform, a blend of draconian tradition and coalition practicality. "You must be Kasha," he said, his voice carrying the same resonant quality as Vailitha's but with a warmer, more welcoming tone. "Vailith has told me much about you over the years, though I confess I never imagined her messages would lead to this moment." Kasha caught her breath from her sprint through the station. "You came quickly. When Vailith Stormwing invokes a life debt, the universe itself should take notice." Thane's eyes shifted to Vailith, and something passed between them, an understanding forged through shared experience. "Now, tell me everything. Leave nothing out." They did. For the next hour, Kasha and Vailith explained the quantum accident, the discovery of the eggs, Dr. Ramos's findings about the ancient texts, and their fears about what would happen once the news became public. Thane listened without interruption, his expression growing more thoughtful with each revelation. When they finished, he was quiet for a long moment, his clawed fingers steepled in front of him. Finally, he spoke. "You are right to be concerned. The political situation surrounding interspecies relations is more fragile than most civilians realize. There are factions within both human and draconian governments that barely tolerate the current level of cooperation. News of viable hybrid offspring will be seen as either a threat or an opportunity, depending on which faction you ask." "Can you help us?" Vailith asked directly. "I can. But you must understand what you are asking. Protecting your family will require navigating some of the most treacherous political waters in known space. We will need to move quickly, establish legal precedents, and build a coalition of supporters before your opponents can organize against you." Thane stood and began pacing, his tail swishing behind him in a gesture of deep thought. The Interstellar Coalition has protocols for unprecedented situations, but they were written assuming theoretical scenarios, not practical applications. We will need to invoke emergency protections, claim your children as the first members of a new protected species category, and secure sanctuary rights that supersede individual planetary laws. "That sounds impossible," Kasha said. "It is merely improbable," Thane replied with what might have been a smile. "And I have built my career on making the improbable happen. But I need your complete trust. There will be moments when my actions may seem to work against you, times when I ask you to reveal information you would rather keep private. Can you give me that trust?" Vailith looked at Kasha, and in that glance, entire conversations happened. After a moment, they both nodded. "Then we begin immediately," Thane said. He pulled out a secure communicator and began entering commands. "I am contacting my team on Horizon's Edge. We have legal experts, xenobiologists, and political strategists who specialize in impossible cases. They will be here within 12 hours. What do we do in the meantime?" Kasha asked.